Good morning, Faith Family. It's Thursday, December 31st. That's right, the last day of 2020. And I almost could sense a sigh there. Whew, thank goodness. It's easy to look back on this year and be grateful that it's over because of all the challenges we faced. And I can go on and on with, we got COVID, we have the election taking place, we have all the social unrest and disorder, on and on, and that on top of just the normal stresses and pressures we deal with. And so it's easy to just feel that sense of release and saying, thank goodness that's over. But I don't know that that's healthy, because I don't know that it's over in the sense of the challenges that we're going to be facing, especially as believers, and especially, as my Lord's church, as we seek to influence our culture and our community here in Van Cleve with the glorious gospel of Christ. We can expect to encounter opposition, because the adversary, Satan, is not resting, knowing that his time is very limited. And that might be why this lesson is so timely, the idea of redirecting our anger, because it's become commonplace in our culture to allow our emotions to just jump right in there and take control, to where the calm, sensible approach that used to characterize our culture, our developed culture. We're not a third world country. We're an advanced society, supposedly. And yet, I rarely remember a time in my life when emotions drove us more than now. And that's why today's verse is probably so powerful. In James 1:19 says, "My dear brothers and sisters," a term of strong endearment here, "understand this: everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger." And that's so true. And the idea of being quick to listen. And that means that's our first inclination, our first natural response should be to listen carefully. That's the word I really want to stick in there, is listen intently, listen carefully. But the whole idea, of course, is to ultimately here that listening needs to be the first thing we do. And I think most of us are smart enough to know that listen doesn't just mean that we're hearing something coming into our ears. It means that we're observing a person's posture. We're taking in the surroundings. Listening means really trying to get a grasp of what's going on here. And that's why emotions are so detrimental, because our emotions typically hinder that. They create a barrier to our capacity to carefully and concisely and accurately assess the situation, gather information, and then calculate a very intellectual, God-honoring response. So James says, first of all, you got to listen carefully, listen closely. Then he says, be slow to speak. Don't let your words be quick. I remember one time reading the writer of Proverbs says, when words are many, the inevitability of sin is going to happen. And so we should be slow to speak. And yet so many times, whether it's through responding to a social media post, or responding in a conversation, we quickly, we're jabbing back, we get defensive. And that's not of the Spirit of God. Think about all the times that Christ was attacked in his public ministry. Attacked publicly, knowing that the intention of the ones coming against him was to humiliate him and to damage his ministry and his calling into question his character. And notice that very rarely, if ever, did he respond emotionally. He was always very careful, very calculated, and granted, he was fully man, fully God. And yet we know we have the Holy Spirit. And so that's the reason why part of the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. It's the last one, in fact. Gentleness, patience comes before that, self-control. So we need to listen carefully and constructively. We need to speak back compassionately. And then, like he says, slower is the way sometimes it's explained, to get angry. I know today's lesson is challenging, today's Devo is challenging, but it's absolutely essential that we as the church and we as followers of Christ take this principle and put it into practice daily, put it into practice in our marriage, put it into practice in our families, put it into practice in our workplace or vocation. No matter what the context, we need to be recaptured by these principles that James is putting out there, so that we will be correct, it'll be righteous anger, it'll be a proper God-honoring response to what's going on around us, or maybe even to us. Well, as we look forward to the start of a brand new year, it's not just about a fresh start in terms of our finances, our relationships, all those different things. It's just one more opportunity where we can commit ourselves fresh and new to doing exactly what Christ has commissioned us to do, to live sin.